In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how I would conduct a goal analysis and subordinate skill analysis on a simple instructional goal, making scrambled eggs. But before I start, I'd like to say a few words about goal analysis and subordinate skill analysis. The purpose here is to identify everything that needs to be included in instruction, not to get the perfect diagram. I've seen a lot of novice instructional designers spend a great deal of time worrying about how many steps they have or how big they are, or whether something should be shown as sub-skills or subordinate skills, or verbal information, or in a cluster analysis. And a lot of that can be wasted effort. The purpose here is to make sure that you have the tools to really analyze deeply what's going on in the process so that you are able to identify everything that needs to be in that instruction. These are really just tools for designers. They are not part of the final instruction. Learners, teachers, no one necessarily ever sees your design documents except the other designers that you're working with, and you're usually talking with them over these documents. So these are very much living documents that go through multiple iterations and are used as a tool for designers, not as a final product. And a final word of caution. The examples that you see in your textbook and here are often rather simple ones, things that you probably already know how to do and feel that you're already an expert on. That tends to make the process of these analyses seem more complicated than they should be. After all, you should be able to make scrambled eggs without having to go through so much work to design this instruction. However, it's important to recognize that as an instructional designer, sometimes you have to design instruction on things for which you are not an expert. So working on developing these skills of analysis with something simple like this can lay the foundation for being able to handle more complicated tasks. So our first step is to conduct a goal analysis. Now remember that a goal analysis is basically creating a list of steps that an expert performer of that goal would go through in order to actually accomplish that goal. The goal analysis is not the order in which you would present the instruction. It doesn't tell you what is the most important thing to learn in the instruction. Instead, it is simply a list of the steps that an expert would go through. So let's get started listing the steps that an expert performer would actually go through. Got some boxes here. I'm going to copy. Okay. So as an expert performer, the first thing that I would do in making scrambled eggs is to put a pan on the stove. So I'm going to say select pan. So my next step would be to scramble some eggs. However, as I think about it, and I think about the learners that I'm designing this for, some of them could be as young as 8 years old. This would be one of the first things that they learn how to cook. Scrambling eggs is actually a complicated task because it involves two different skills. First, you have to crack the eggs into a mixing bowl. And then next you need to actually beat the eggs. Okay, rather than having you watch me type all of these different steps, I've just added them quickly, but I'll go through them. After I've beat the eggs, I would add some salt, pepper, and milk. Then I would melt some butter in the pan to coat the bottom of it, pour the eggs in, and then cook them while stirring slowly. And then the eggs are ready to serve. Now, if you're saying, hold on, there's a lot that's missing here. There are a lot of other things that happen while you are scrambling eggs that are not represented here. You're absolutely right. This is a first draft. This is a document that is going to be revised many times, many iterations as you analyze your goal and your subordinate skills. I've added the arrows to show that this is a process. Now, before we go on, another question that new designers often have is, how many steps should I have in this process? How big should each step be? The answer is that it really doesn't matter. Dick and Carey suggest that you have between 5 and 15 steps for an hour, for 1 to 2 hours of instruction. But that's really just a guideline. Whether you prefer to list 20 baby steps or reduce this down to about 4 or 5 steps, you're going to go through the same process. You're going to analyze each of these steps, figure out what is actually going on there, and potentially revise it, and list everything that the user needs to know and see in order to perform this task. Okay, so let's go on to the subordinate analysis. I'm going to start here with this very first step, select pan. As I think about this, this is a great example of why you need to go through an instructional design process. I know what pan I would use to scramble some eggs, but a child would not. So I need to be a lot more specific about this particular step. Now I could say something like select appropriate pan, or what's probably best is to try and be as specific as possible in here. So I'm going to go through and say select a frying pan about a Teflon frying pan of the appropriate size. So what do kids as young as 8 need to know in order to select that correct pan? Well, if it's got to be Teflon, then they are going to need to know about coating. If it's going to need to be a frying pan, they're going to need to be able to distinguish that from other types of pans, or at least from pots. And they're going to need some guidelines as far as size goes. Okay, so I just added this off camera. So basically the skill that they need in order to select the correct pan is they need to be able to discriminate among cookware by 3 different qualities: by the type, whether it's a pan or a pot, what type of pan, by the coating, Teflon, and by the size. So in order to do that, basically what they need is some verbal information. So next I'm going to add that. Okay, so here's that information. Obviously, I'm going to need to show them what a frying pan looks like, talk about Teflon versus other coatings so that they can actually identify a Teflon coated pan themselves, and then give them some advice on the size of pan to use, either a medium or a small pan based on the number of eggs that they use. Now, Word is giving me a little bit of trouble with writing in my V here, but you can see that this is verbal information and that this all pertains to this particular subordinate skill. Now, what you should notice from this is that this process is causing me to think more deeply about what needs to be included in the instruction. When I first started thinking about making scrambled eggs, I didn't consider the fact that the learners who might use this instruction may not have a clue as to what an appropriate pan is. So they might actually get one that doesn't have Teflon coating, at which time their eggs are going to stick. Or they might try using a saucepan, which would be problematic. The point is that this process has caused me to think much more deeply about what the learner needs to know in order to be able to accomplish this task. And as a result, I've got a better idea of the types of information that need to be included in the instruction. Okay, I'm ready to go on with my second step. So to make this a little bit easier, I've grouped these in Word, and I'm going to take them and move them to the next page so that I get a little bit more room for myself. Word is going to let me to work on my second page. Remember, all you need to do is to add a circle here with a letter in it and connect that back to that same box up here, and that will help anybody who's reading this document to know that you've moved that information to another page. Okay, I'm going to stop this video here and continue in part 2.